Hey friends, how's it going? At the start of the movie, we meet Chris, a wealthy tech millionaire. He's seen talking to his wife Jamie about their divorce. Chris admits he hasn't signed the divorce papers or the alimony agreement yet. Chris owns a successful tech company, but his obsession with work drove a wedge between him and his family. Feeling neglected, Jamie decided to leave, taking their only daughter Willow with her. Jamie tells him she's moved on and that he should do the same. But for Chris, letting go isn't that simple. He tells her he's already sold the company, hoping it might change her mind. But Jamie stands firm, believing he did it only for the money. She hangs up, ending the conversation for good. Later, we see Jamie with Willow. The little girl says she misses her dad and wonders why her mom doesn't love him anymore. Jamie admits she still misses him too, and deep down, she never really stopped loving him. That night, like always, Chris heads to his favorite grocery store around midnight. There, he notices a young woman struggling to pick out a bottle of wine. Chris offers to help, and during their brief chat, he learns her name, Sky. She's stunning, effortlessly beautiful, the kind of woman who turns heads without even trying. And despite himself, Chris feels an instant pull toward her. Later that night, outside the store, Sky waits for her Uber, but it turns out her ride got canceled. Chris notices her standing there and offers to drop her home. Sky hesitates for a moment, then agrees. When they arrive, Chris realizes she's staying at a rundown roadside motel. Sky seems reluctant to go inside. She tells him she had a fight with her roommate Lisa and doesn't want to face her right now. Seeing that, Chris offers to let her crash at his place for the night, just until things cool down and he'll drop her back later. At first, Sky politely refuses and starts heading toward her room. But before stepping in, she stops. Something makes her turn back. Chris approaches her again, repeats his offer, and this time, she agrees. Together, they drive off to his mansion. When they arrive, Sky is taken aback by how lavish the place is. Inside, Chris offers her a drink, and soon they're lost in conversation, talking about life, work, and everything in between. Chris tells her he's a tech geek who made his fortune through mobile apps, games, and digital banking. Sky, on the other hand, says she's a model temporarily living in town for a project, and to make some extra money, she also works part-time as a waitress. Chris had never opened up to anyone this easily before, but there was something different about Sky. She was carefree, funny, and full of life. He found himself genuinely enjoying her company. Time flew by faster than they realized. Before they knew it, it was already 2:30 in the morning, and Sky still hadn't gone home. When she asks Chris to drop her off, he insists she stay the night instead. Sky agrees, and that night they end up spending it together, lost in passion. For the first time in a long while, Chris didn't feel lonely. The next morning, Chris woke up to an empty bed. Sky was gone. She'd quietly slipped back to her motel, where her roommate Lisa had spent the whole night worried sick. When Sky finally walked in, Lisa bombarded her with questions. But Sky didn't say a word. She just went straight to her room and collapsed. Meanwhile, Chris sat alone in his huge, silent house. Without his wife and daughter, it already felt empty, and now, even lonelier. He couldn't stop thinking about Sky, but she hadn't even left her number. That night, unable to shake her off his mind, Chris went to the bar where she worked. When Sky saw him, she stayed calm, almost like she knew he'd show up. After her shift, he offered to drop her home, but as they walked to his car, they caught someone trying to break in. Before Chris could react, Sky grabbed a bottle and hurled it at the thief. The guy panicked, slashed Chris's leg with a sharp object, and ran. Sky rushed him to the hospital, got him patched up, and took him home. With his leg badly injured, Chris now needed someone to look after him. That's when Sky offered to stay, to cook, clean, and take care of him. She even joked she'd be a nurse who keeps her patient company too. Comforted by her warmth, Chris agreed. To make things easier, Chris asked Sky to move in and even gave her his home security code. Full access, no limits. Everything was moving fast, maybe too fast. Back at the motel, Lisa was pacing anxiously when the landlord, Ronald, commented that things had been calmer before Sky arrived. He even warned her about Sky, but Lisa, blinded by love, told him to stay out of it. Moments later, Sky walked in. Furious, Lisa demanded answers, but before things got heated, Sky pulled her close and kissed her. Turns out, Lisa wasn't just her roommate, she was her lover. Her anger came from heartbreak, but Skye barely seemed to care. That same day, Skye packed up her things and officially moved in with Chris, cutting all ties with Lisa and the motel. Soon, she and Chris grew closer. Skye cared for him tenderly, and Chris, lonely and vulnerable, fell deeply in love. The next morning, Ronald knocked on Lisa's door, shouting about unpaid rent. When he pushed it open, he froze. Lisa was lying in the bathtub, drenched in blood. Later that day, Jamie called Chris about their divorce papers. He mentioned his accident and that a nurse was looking after him, but left out one detail. The nurse was now his new girlfriend. Maybe he wanted to keep things simple, or maybe he just didn't want to face the mess that was coming. But soon after, Skye's behavior started to change. She grew distant, secretive, always watching. Chris would catch her glancing at his phone, pretending it was nothing, and when he fell asleep, she'd quietly go through it. He never suspected a thing. The nights blurred together in a haze of passion, with Skye giving him everything he thought he wanted. Days passed like that, until one morning, Chris woke up to find his phone missing and every other device in the house locked. Only the TV and security system still worked. Skye wasn't home, and as the minutes dragged on, worry turned to panic. That phone wasn't just personal, it held confidential files from his company. Then, a breaking news alert flashed on the TV. A body had been found at the same motel where Skye used to live. The victim was Lisa. At first, police thought it was suicide, but Ronald refused to believe it. He said Lisa wasn't the type to end her life, and that Skye, her roommate, hadn't been seen since that morning. Just then, Skye walked in, acting like nothing had happened. She smiled, holding a box of fried chicken, and told Chris to join her. Still shaken, he asked about his missing phone. Skye stayed calm, saying it must be lying around, and that they'd look for it after lunch. Her tone was sharp, almost commanding, like she already owned the place. She even said she'd quit modeling and was now his full-time nurse. Trying to process everything, Chris mentioned Lisa's death, but Skye didn't flinch. No sadness, no shock. When he told her to call the police, she smirked and said it'd be pointless because she was the one who killed Lisa. That's when the truth hit. Skye wasn't some random girl he'd met by chance. She was a con artist, a manipulator who'd been watching him for months. She'd used Lisa from the very beginning, just to get access to that motel room, the perfect spot to spy on Chris. Their accidental meeting at the grocery store, their late-night talks, even their romance, every moment had been part of her plan. She knew everything about him, his routines, his habits, every detail of his life. Furious, Chris demanded she leave, but it was too late. Skye already had control of his home, his data, and his life. The phone she stole wasn't just a phone. It was the key to his entire security system. When Chris finally tried to escape, Skye used his own smart home app to lock every door. Before he could react, a surge of electricity shot through him, knocking him out cold. When Chris regained consciousness, he found himself strapped to a wheelchair. His hands, legs, and even his mouth were tightly bound. Moments later, Skye walked in, calm, confident, and terrifying. She demanded all his passwords and security codes. When he refused, she kicked the wheelchair, sending him crashing to the floor. Then, she grabbed a power drill and pressed it against his wounded leg until he screamed. The pain was unbearable. Finally, Chris broke down and revealed everything. Within minutes, Skye transferred all his money into her account. Meanwhile, at the motel, Ronald searched Lisa's old room and found a telescope, pointed straight at Chris's house. It was proof that Skye had been spying on him all along. Shocked, Ronald decided to keep watch. Back at the house, Skye's cruelty only escalated. Money wasn't enough anymore. Now she wanted his stocks, his bonds, everything. She forced him to call his bankers and liquidate all his shares. When Chris refused, a violent fight broke out. In desperation, he tried to choke Skye, but she quickly regained control, grabbed a pair of scissors, and slashed him. Furious, she showed him a video of his wife and daughter, warning that they'd be next if he didn't cooperate. Terrified and defeated, Chris gave in. Under Skye's command, he watched helplessly as she sold off everything. The furniture, the paintings, even the most valuable items in his home. And helping her was the same man who'd once tried to steal his car. It turned out that attack had been part of her plan, the injury just to set up to gain his trust and access to his home. One afternoon, after finishing her chores, Skye stepped out, unaware Ronald was secretly watching. The moment she left, he broke in, smashing a window to get inside. Chris was still tied up and weak. When Ronald ripped off the tape from his mouth, Chris begged him to call the police before Skye returned, but Ronald hesitated. He wanted money first, 200 grand in cash. Chris promised to pay, but he had nothing liquid, so he offered a priceless Picasso painting worth 6 or 7 million. Only then did Ronald agree to untie him. But there was a problem. Ronald didn't have a phone. He avoided them, convinced 5G caused brain cancer. Chris's hope of calling for help vanished. Before they could figure out their next move, Skye arrives and realized someone had entered the house. She rushed back immediately. Ronald tried to threaten her with a knife, but Skye didn't flinch. She laughed, mocking him for being foolish enough to come in alone. Ronald pleaded with her to take the painting and leave, promising not to tell a soul. But Skye ignored him. Calmly, she grabbed a sword from the wall and charged. Then Skye played a deadly game of cat and mouse. To mask the chaos, she cranked up the home music system to full volume, drowning out Ronald's screams. Within seconds, she stabbed him repeatedly, killing him instantly. Ronald's greed had cost him his life, but unknowingly, he created an opportunity for Chris to escape. Somehow, Chris managed to free himself from the chair and flee. Outside, he tried to get into his car, but it was locked. Desperate, he jumped onto his snow bike and raced off. In the chaos, he slipped on a rock and stumbled into the street, narrowly avoiding a car that nearly ran him down. The driver, a man named Sebastian, got out and rushed to help. He seemed kind, offering Chris a ride and promising to call the police. Chris, exhausted and panicked, told him about the killer girl. Sebastian assured him he was safe. But Chris didn't know the truth. Sebastian hadn't called the cops at all. Instead, he called Skye and drove Chris straight back to the same house, where Skye was waiting, bloody, triumphant, and ready. They forced Chris back into the wheelchair and dragged him inside. That's when the shocking truth hit. Sebastian was one of her accomplices. In fact, he was Skye's stepfather, the man who had trained her from childhood to con and manipulate wealthy targets. They were professional con artists, and Chris was just another victim in their long line of schemes. Desperate, Chris asked why him, why his life had to be stolen. Sebastian smiled coldly. "It's not stealing," he said. "It's giving back." Sebastian tells Chris that he may be rich, but he didn't earn it all on his own. People like him always think they're smarter than everyone else. But that's not true. There are plenty of smart people who never got what he has. And instead of using his wealth to live, Chris just hid behind it, alone, trapped in his big house, guarding his money like it was all he had. That night, still tied to the chair, Chris could hear Skye and Sebastian together in the next room. He felt disgusted with himself for ever falling for someone like her. Moments later, Skye returned and apologized, saying she had to feed the wolf. She admitted Sebastian was no lover compared to Chris, and confessed she genuinely loved the moments they shared. Despite everything, it was clear she had real feelings for him too. Seeing a chance, Chris told her she could have had it all. He would have given her everything, eventually. He loved her. Then he asked why she was still here. After taking his money, his house, his stocks, what more did they want? Skye's answer was chilling. One thing remained, his bonds. $14 million in bearer bonds, stored in a safe deposit box in an American bank. And to get them, she needed his thumbprint. That was why he was still alive. Realizing the danger, Chris made up his mind. He would never go to the bank with them. But Skye and Sebastian had other plans. They didn't take him. Instead, they cut off his thumb. A while later, Jamie and her daughter Willow arrived, worried that Chris hadn't answered their calls. Seeing a car outside, Jamie assumed he had company, unaware of the horror inside. The moment Jamie stepped in, she sensed something was wrong, but it was already too late. As Willow headed to her room, Skye picked her up and approached Jamie, claiming she was Chris's private nurse. Jamie's instincts screamed danger. Then Sebastian appeared. When Jamie asked about Chris, they locked Jamie and Willow in a room with him, and what they saw was horrifying. Chris's leg badly injured, his thumb severed. Meanwhile, the con artists were plotting their next move. Sebastian wrapped Chris's thumb in bandages to make it look like a simple injury, and, together with Skye, prepared to head to the bank. On the road, Sebastian noticed something odd. "Why do you look different?" he asked. Though they had pulled off similar schemes before, Skye's behavior seemed unusual this time. Back at the house, Willow asked her father to play a coin game. As Chris tossed the coin for heads or tails, his eyes caught on the vents. Though too small for him or Jamie to fit through, Willow admitted she could. Jamie immediately refused, thinking it too dangerous. Chris knew the stakes and insisted they escape. Skye and Sebastian were monsters, and if they didn't get out before the pair returned, everyone would be killed. Meanwhile, Skye and Sebastian arrived at the bank. The vault officer asked if they were Mr. and Mrs. Deckers. They confirmed it. When the officer offered a handshake to Sebastian, he excused himself, citing his injured hand. They needed Chris's thumbprint to open the vault. After several tense attempts, the scanner finally accepted it, and the vault door creaked open. But it was empty. Not a single penny remained. Only a letter, written by Jamie for Chris. Jamie had secretly withdrawn all the cash, fearing Chris might cheat her after the divorce. Back home, Chris realized the danger. If Skye and Sebastian found out, they'd come back to kill them. Meanwhile, Willow crawled through the air vent, terrified but determined. She knew the door's password and managed to free everyone. Just as hope seemed near, Skye and Sebastian returned. Sebastian handed Skye a gun, ordering her to kill Chris while he checked the rooms. But in a hidden space, Chris lunged at Sebastian with a pickaxe. But Sebastian overpowered him. At that moment, Skye appeared with the gun. Sebastian urged her to shoot Chris. She raised it, almost pulling the trigger, but something stopped her. Then, in a shocking turn, she turned on Sebastian and shot him instead. Perhaps, after everything, she had truly fallen in love with Chris. Seizing the moment, Chris attacked Skye with the pickaxe, grabbed his phone, and hid in another room. Using the device, he began controlling the smart systems in the house, turning the place itself into a weapon. He blasted loud music, then shut off all the lights, disorienting and confusing Skye. But he knew he couldn't just hide. To save Jamie and Willow, he had to confront her. Despite his injuries, Chris launched a head-on attack. He tried to take her down, but his body was too weak. Skye overpowered him, beating him mercilessly. Just then, Jamie jumped in to help. A brutal fight broke out between the two women, but Skye was completely unhinged and far stronger. She managed to wound Jamie badly, leaving both of them bleeding. It seemed as though Skye would finish them all. Then, a gunshot echoed through the house. Skye collapsed to the floor, dead. Willow had fired the shot just in time, saving her parents' lives. Jamie rushed to Willow, hugging her tightly, tears of relief streaming down her face. But the horror wasn't over. Outside, police sirens blared, and to everyone's shock, Skye was still alive, gasping weakly. She whispered one word, Margaret, her true name. Then, finally, she exhaled her last breath. As she died, tears streamed down her face, and with that, the movie came to a chilling end. In the end, we see the real Skye. She came into Chris's life to manipulate him, to take advantage of his loneliness and divorce. But somewhere along the way, she actually fell for him. And when Sebastian ordered her to kill Chris, she couldn't. Instead, she turned the gun on him, a shocking act that showed she was no longer in control, and maybe never fully was. Those final tears, they're heartbreaking. Their regret, love, and the painful realization that Chris was the only person who ever truly cared for her. In her last moments, she feels the weight of everything she's done. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this recap, give this video a thumbs up and subscribe for more chilling movie recaps. See you next time.